any strategy is only useful if something actually changes as a result of the strategy. A strategy must result in us doing things differently. What kinds of things must we do differently? Well, there are 4 different things that we have choices over. The first one is our money. As a church, the majority of the money we receive comes through our offerings, and we have the ability to make choices about where we spend our money. One of the ways over the years we've chosen to spend our money is to purchase buildings and land. And so, as a church, we have choices we can make about our buildings and land. Another way we have chosen to use our money as a church is to employ people. Currently, we employ 3 pastors, myself, Dan and Paul Ray, and our cleaner, Barrett. The 4 of us are employed by our church family in order to do things that those who are not paid in the church but still part of the team can't do alone. And so the church has chosen to employ people for that purpose. The 4th major thing that the church can allocate differently and has choice over is the time of the unpaid team members. So we have choices about what our paid team members, our people we pay salaries to, do. And we have choices about the time that is spent by our unpaid team members. And one of the things I love about our church is there are so many unpaid team members who are part of Citywide Baptist Church. And we simply would not be anything like the church we are if we were relying on only the work of paid people. Much of the very, very important work done here at Citywide is done by our unpaid team members. One of the things that I love about being here in Lena Valley is just the reminder about what's important, that this building represents. I love that tucked away behind this refrigerator in this hospitality section of the building is this cornerstone. You see, you can't even see the first word there. It says to, you see the bottom end of the O there, to the glory of God. This stone was laid by the Reverend K.A. Smith, President of the Baptist Union of Tasmania, on the 17th of July, 1960. What the church at the time here at Lena Valley understood, that our resources are meant to be dedicated to the strategy that God has laid on our hearts. They have a purpose, they have a function. And so our question as we inherit the legacy of the church that's gone before us is to work out, what does it mean for our money, the time of our employed people, our buildings, and the time of our unpaid team members to be used for the glory of God? I've been challenged by Jesus' words where the teachers of the law said to him, "What are you doing? You're doing everything wrong. You're not doing what we expect." And he told them a story, and he said, "You don't put new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the wine will burst the skins and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins." God is always doing a new thing, and he is inviting us into a new chapter. My friend Chris sent us a photo on the church Facebook group of a picture he believed illustrated kind of what God is doing in the church at the moment. There's a picture of the trunk of an old tree and a new tree growing up right in the middle of it. I think that's a bit of a picture of what God is doing amongst us right now. And as a church, I think we need to be ready to have difficult discussions. One business thinker said, "Your organisation is perfectly aligned to get the results it's currently getting." So our church is perfectly organised to get the results we're currently getting. What he said is, if you want to get different results, you have to organise yourself differently. You have to arrange ourselves differently. So that's what we want to talk about. As a leadership team, as the senior pastor, we want to bring to you how we want to organise ourselves differently in order to achieve the strategy we believe that God is laying on our hearts. So for us to make our strategy a reality, we've got to decide what we do with our money, our time of both the paid employees of the church and the unpaid team members, and also our buildings. As you'll see in this graph, the majority of our income comes from our offerings, and the majority of our expenses goes on by far the majority goes on wages, but also towards the buildings and towards administration. We're not suggesting we make major changes at this stage to how we spend our money, but that rather we think carefully about how the resources we use our money to procure or to facilitate are spent. In the handout that we have sent to you, and we'll have a link to on this video, we list specific actions that we're wanting to align our pastors around and all of our unpaid team members. There's a whole range of exciting opportunities and strategic things we need to be focused on when it comes to helping Jesus be the centre of our lives. There are things we can actually do, and our goal is that you will be each day a step closer to Jesus, that we will be the kind of church that is continually encouraging you to take a step closer to Jesus. We'll also want to focus on things that help build authentic community. I love the fact that our Nepali community and the Australian English-speaking congregations are finding ways to be a community together. And I think it's going to be an exciting thing to welcome a little country church from Levendale into our church fellowship and work out what does it mean to welcome a country church into our church fellowship, to model genuine community, to move towards small groups and kingdom cells. There's specific actions that we see listed in the handout that we want to focus our time in moving towards. We also want to focus our time in setting up the game so that our church actually and actively supports you in stepping into the story that God has for you, that we provide training for you that helps you do it. And we also provide practical support that helps you do it, knowing that some of us are called to support the church. The Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians talks about ligaments, that the body is held together by ligaments. And I think many of us, including me, are called to be those kind of ligaments whose job it is to hold the body together, to attach it to attach people to Jesus, to each other, and to enable people to fulfill the function that they're in the body to fulfill. And you may be someone who kind of knows you're called to be that kind of job. Well, we've got plenty of work to do. And like never before, we as a church need to, if this genuinely is the direction that God's calling us to head in, we need more and more of us to step into the remarkable tasks and projects that God is outlining for us, and to prepare ourselves for what He's going to continue to bring to us. So there are specific things that we're wanting to prioritise in those three directions. The goal for authentic community is that we would be a step closer to each other, that each day, each week, you would be moving a step closer towards others, and that our goal for helping you find your purpose is that you would each week step into your week following Jesus' direction for you, that you would find the purpose that God has for you, and that we as your church would have your back and help you find the purpose that God has for you. We're going to keep talking about that. But practically what that means for our time is we focus in this direction, but also we focus our buildings in this direction. we want to dedicate more of our building facilities towards our strategic direction. I love this room. This was the original church here at Lena Valley, and it was architecturally designed in the late 50s to house the life of the church at Lena Valley. But as that life grew and changed, this building was no longer adequate for that purpose, and the function of the building had to change, and now we have a new auditorium. We're wanting to suggest that we think about ways of altering and developing how we use our buildings towards the strategic direction that God has for us. We're suggesting that we develop our Mornington campus as kind of like a calling support hub. What we mean by that is that increasingly people are having to work alone, and there are people who are studying or working online or have options about how they work, and we want to build a community of people who are stepping into the unique stories that God has for them, but working alongside one another. Towards this end, we want to organise our existing office space and also the spaces that will be vacated by Citywide Fitness to have different size meeting spaces, to have hot desks where people can come in and work and have access to all the administration facilities and internet and everything else. We want to set up little micro offices where some people may want to come and work full time at the church on the task that God has in front of them, and they actually need a small private office. We want to set that up so that they can have private conversations. We also want to have small private offices that people can come and use sporadically or for specific sessions. We want to have workshops where people who are called to the arts can work on their arts things, that all kinds of people can work shoulder to shoulder under the roof, under the one roof, and be an intentional community of people seeking to follow Jesus' guidance, and that our church would create a facility that helps people step into the calling that God has on their lives. And that may be a computer programmer, it may be somebody who is writing books, or it may be a student, or it may be a business person, or it may be a salesperson. Anyone can work from our church building as an expression of the vocation that God has on their life. Particularly, we want to support those who are part of our church family to step into the calling that God has for them in community. As part of that, we want to develop our cafe space so that it's a welcoming and natural space for relationship, for connection between people through the week. And every day we want to have like a morning tea where we get together and just have a cuppa for those that are available, not in any way a compulsory thing, but just an expression of community, that it will be a place where people can work effectively and not feel like they have to get seconded off into work for the church, but that together that we can be the kind of place where you can have informal discussions, where you can get a meal, where you can have a cuppa, and that once a day we come together to share news and pray for each other and have a morning tea. And we also want to have a dedicated and permanent space for prayer. So our goal would be that anyone can walk into the Citywide Mornington complex and engage with and see a productive, kingdom-focused community at work being supported by an administration of people who are there to lay a platform. And that not everybody has to be there all the time, but that anybody would feel free to come in and have a cuppa or do some homework, and that we would have the facilities to help you do what it is that God is calling you to do in every area of your life. Now, alongside that, we want to continue the development of this Lena Valley campus as a centre for training and conferences. This building is uniquely prepared and situated to be a really helpful space for conferences and training. We want to develop a culture of continuous learning where all of us are continually on the journey with Jesus. And as part of that, not only here at Lena Valley, but online, we want to develop an extensive online resource of training and equipping to help you step into the journey God has for you. And to enable all of these things to happen, we want to strengthen our administration. I love the idea that administration comes from the root words ad ministry. And so we want to have prayer support for you. We would love you to be part of our prayer chains. We want to be ready to jump into prayer for one another and have dedicated times of prayer. We want to have administrative support so that if God lays a dream on someone's heart to go for something, that we would be able to help them think through what it means to administrate it well, to find insurance and do the necessary paperwork, and that we'd have people who can walk with them in that. We want to have support for people with financial questions, and actually for some people who are wanting to start ministries or develop little micro businesses, that we'd be able to help with financial management. We want to help with things like information and communications technology. We've got a fantastic printer at our Mornington campus, and we've got good internet, mostly. And we've got a whole lot of information and communications technology facility that it needs to be more than just about organising ourselves for Sunday morning. We want to organise ourselves to support people with their information and communications technology needs. We also want to help people think through communication and all the different little ministries that God's birthing in place. We want to help them find websites and think through how to access technology like apps or other, social media or organising engagement with the broadcast media, whatever it is. We want to help people think through communications. And with Dan Hutchison has been trained in coaching, and we want to really facilitate and help people think through and be coached, to have mentoring and coaching as part of what we do to help people step into the story that God has for them. Our goal for our administration and reorganising our administration is that all of us are freed to focus on and be effective in the calling that God has on your life. That all of us are supported in that. And that's the task of your church, to have your back. So we want to order our time, we want to order our buildings, and we want to order our administration to help us head in this direction. So what does all that mean? A few things. We want to suggest that we at this point begin a 2-year transition towards this way of organising ourselves. That we'll partner with the other Baptist churches in the state, and then increasingly find ways to partner, because they too are wanting to head in this direction. We clearly are going to need our unpaid team members to find their calling in new ways. If you know you're called to support the church, we need you. If you know that God is calling you to step into new ways of expressing your calling, we need you to step up and step into the calling that God has for you. There is room for everybody to be involved. We need everybody to be involved if this truly is what God's asking of us in this networked world. We're also interested in talking to anybody who would be interested in being part of this experiment of establishing a kingdom community, a kingdom workplace community at the Citywide Mornington hub. That it could possibly be a bit of a model, that down the track we might find other places, maybe the northern suburbs and down the Kingston area, that could be similar kind of hubs that facilitate people stepping into the calling that God has on their life. And while we make these transitions over these next few years, we believe it's right not to necessarily just cut down our expenditure, but to step into some extra expenditure, and possibly even depending on how things work out. But initially in this first year, as we as a leadership have talked, we believe it's right to operate a deficit budget in this time of transition to help us transition to this new way of operating. And along with that, there will be some capital costs associated with reorganising the Mornington building down this path. So we are going to need to make changes, but it is clear that the world has changed and the old ways of doing church need to adapt. Like never before, people need community. People need Jesus. People need hope. And our sense is that God is calling us to step into a new way of thinking about church. A church that is not just about Sunday morning, but a church that is every day of the week. And a church that frees people to find their unique story with Jesus as they look to him as the author and perfecter of their faith. I hope you get a chance to look at the document we're sending out with this. I'd love your feedback, and we'd love to hear more from you as we explore this strategy that we believe God is taking us on as a church family.